The state government can save a lot of money. So schools are important. Let's just get that out of the way. So why would you close schools, which you did, Governor, when no children died of COVID? What would make you make that decision? You close schools. And by the way, the impact on that is generational. You destroyed the lives. You and the other governors that closed schools destroyed the lives of children in doing that.
Okay, I've got to tell the audience. Please notice your.
Senator, may I respond?
Yeah, that was a question for you.
I think it was. Well, first of all, I think you misunderstand some of the value to.
No. Why did you close schools?
I'm going to address
Just answer that and that filibuster.
I'm not going to filibuster you. Schools, I did not want to close, and
but you did.
Actually, I was not governor at the time.
But you were lieutenant governor and you were the point person. Do you think the governor made a mistake in closing schools?
We reopened the schools.
Did you think he made a mistake?
Well, if I think he made a mistake, may I answer the question, or is this senator you're going to filibuster me, sir?
No, you're going to answer my direct question. Just say I'm not going to answer you.
No, I'm going to
Do
answer
you think
question.
it was a good idea? Yes or no, the two choices in this answer. Do you think it was a good idea to close schools? Simple answer. Just give me a yes or a no.
As we had COVID surging through our society because there was massive spread from children to adults, we were waiting to make sure the teachers.
So let me get this straight. You sacrificed the lives of children because maybe they would spread something that you don't know to adults. You thought that was a good idea.
No, that's not always. Actually, your party was trying to close our schools to get rid of public education. So we have.
Okay. So we're not politicizing this theory. Okay, we're moving on.
You said my government said other governors of those schools, which is
when I'm in Hawaii and I'm having a hearing before you, I will hear before the United States Senate. That can interrupt me. Moving on. So here's the next question for you. Show me the science that said that when I walked into an airport in Hawaii and that I didn't want to tell you because it's none of your business whether I had a COVID vaccine or not, or tested positive or not, because it's also none of your business. Where's the science where I had to quarantine for 14 days? Tell me the science behind why you locked your residents up and did not allow them to go grocery shopping, why you closed your beaches and your parks. I would love you to put that science into this record because you can give me the nice, happy talk, but those were terrible decisions. And what COVID highlighted more than anything else, by the way, it's why I'm here. I ran for the United States Senate, not because I had this deep desire to be a government politician, but because I was so incensed by the arrogance, by the ignorance, by the lack of common sense among our elected officials that we needed different kinds of people here in Washington, D.C. and other places. So,
should I answer those questions, Chairman?
No question for you. That was just
there were several questions. You asked about why a 14-day quarantine. You asked about
what's
the
airport.
Science?
Sure. What's the science? 14 days quarantine.
Because
not 12, not 16.
Actually, I asked for 5 days, just so you know.
So what was it? Was there a dartboard?
No, it was 5 days because that was the amount of time from symptoms to transmission.
So why 14?
The 14-day was before we had the.
So 14 wasn't scientific, just to be clear.
14 days was how long it took for people to get over the disease, and people were still shedding virus for that period, and that's why you do use science and I use science, but you didn't like science for Hawaii. But we did have the test, and we did have the test to enter Hawaii, so people could make a choice, an informed choice, and they did, and then they didn't have to quarantine at all. Just to make sure you know that, because I think you have your facts wrong. And also, I didn't close the beaches. That was the mayor of Honolulu and not me. So just, it is important to get the facts right if you're going to be a political official.
So that's what you're saying. It wasn't me, it was the other guy.
No, it was me who ran the COVID.
Zero accountability. Dr. McCullough.
I'll take accountability if you give me more time.
I'm done with you, Governor. Thank you.
Thank you.
So Dr. McCullough, quick question for you. Just completely objective. Look, I went to business school. I was not a doctor. So I'm going to be fully objective, using your most objectiveness here. Did the vaccine stop the spread of COVID-19?
No.
So then, let me ask you one simple question down the line. You guys can answer me that. So, COVID-19, the vaccine injection, did not stop the spread. Why is it that Joe Biden
was misinformation? I didn't even know what he was talking about. I had never heard that term before in academic medicine or in court deliberations. That's November 19th, 2020. What was he doing? He He was using an old communist propaganda technique. He was attempting to gain leverage over me before a word ever came out of my mouth. We should never have our public servants ever try to gain leverage over anyone who is coming to Washington to help the nation on an important issue. As introduced, I'm an internist, I'm a cardiologist. I believe I'm the most published individual who's ever testified on matters related to COVID-19 in any of these hearings. I've seen and examined more patients. I've examined more data, and I'm one of the most published people on the topic in the world. And as a cardiologist, I can tell you, my role in this was to fight disease, preserve life, and above all, do no harm. Do no harm. Now, the topic today is myocarditis or heart damage from the COVID-19 vaccines. I'm a cardiologist. I know the topic well. I've examined thousands of patients with this problem. Thousands. Before the pandemic, I had 2 patients ever with this problem. There's 1,065 papers in the peer-reviewed literature on COVID vaccine myocarditis. So let me summarize them for you. The first one that came on my radar screen that was alarming came from Washington University in St. Louis, August 18th, 2021. The first author is Vermont College. New England Journal of Medicine. 42-year-old man comes into Washington University Hospital with vaccine myocarditis. The infection is ruled out. It's the vaccine. He's in the hospital. This is one of the best hospitals in the United States. He dies 3 days after taking Moderna. They can't save him in the hospital.
Okay, Dr. McCall, move the microphone just a little bit.
Then one was reported from Korea by Trojan College. This is now a younger man. Just a few days after Pfizer, he comes in the hospital. He dies within 8 hours of being in the hospital. I can tell you, I'm a cardiologist. That doesn't even happen with a heart attack. He dies within 8 hours. I examined all of the slides and the images that the Koreans had showed us. It looked like somebody took a blowtorch to that heart. It was so completely fried with inflammation. His heart was destroyed. These cases, which were widely known at the time, should have gotten everyone's attention. Everyone should have been laser focused on it. We should never have someone die after taking a vaccine that's directly positive. Then Gill and College, Connecticut, published an archive of 2 boys, aged 16 and 17, home died 3 days after taking the vaccine. These are children who were found dead at home by their parents. They're absolutely horrified. They were posted on it. They call in years from Michigan and years from Minnesota to look over what they can find in that outcome. Conclusion, it's Pfizer COVID-19 vaccine. These are autopsies. So for all the mothers in the room, how would they feel if they found their children dead after taking COVID-19? This is in the peer-reviewed literature. This is not misinformation. Everyone should be paying attention. This is not conjecture. This is in the peer-reviewed literature. So we started to ask ourselves, what is going on? Turns out that Pfizer and Moderna and Janssen are the genetic code for the spike protein. The spike protein is the damaging part of the virus. The spike protein is loaded into the body, and it causes tremendous damage to the cell. Acute myocarditis appears to have some genetic predilection, and all of the vials of the vaccine are not the same. But I can tell you, I'm concerned that until the vaccines have stopped, there will be cases of acute myocarditis. And clinically, we've had 216 vaccine deaths this year alone. So if the vaccine campaign continues, we have to look at what are we getting out of it now, 4.5 years of the campaign, and how many more people. I'm Dr. Peter McCall. Thank you, sir.
official of the owner and CEO of MedHealth Clinic, Dr. Carney, the director of organizations, the leading heads of early outpatient treatment of COVID-19 for patients from Greater Birmingham community. Dr. Carney treated over 4,000 long COVID in the whole district, vaccine infusion rates.
I'm going to dovetail a little bit off what Dr. Nicole said. And one of the things that, as a clinician, we also had about 200 people working for him and actually seeing about 170,000 patients a year. When COVID came along, I had to really figure out how to not only help my staff make sure they're safe, but also help the patients that my organization is responsible for. And that really made me dive into understanding pathology. And what I came away with was understanding that the spike protein, the S1 subunit specifically, is not a benign protein. It triggers inflammation, disrupts endothelial barriers, it induces fibrin resistant breakdown, and it promotes a lot of amyloid aggregates, which is what I've researched. These effects impair oxygen delivery, damage blood vessels, contribute to clotting pathologies that manifest a lot of the symptoms that we're seeing in the long COVID vaccine, which to this day is a huge amount of people. We're talking upwards of 10 to 15 million people in America that are being affected by the consequences of COVID and long-form COVID vaccine injury. And the typical symptoms are things like heart racing, brain tremor, shortness of breath, and post-exertional malaise. In my clinic, I actually use the immunofluorescent microscopy to actually see what's going on in the blood and look for these amyloid aggregates. Some as young as teenagers that are unable to stand. Others are previously active adults suffering small strokes without typical identifiable causes. These are not abstract theories. They're the lived realities of my patients in Alabama. The mRNA injection heralded as a solution introduced a novel mechanism, lipid nanoparticles delivering modified mRNA that instructs the cells to produce a stabilized spike protein. Unlike traditional vaccines, this approach resulted in uncontrolled production of the spike protein for an unknown duration and distributes it widely across organs, including the heart, brain, vasculature, and over message. Actually, the EMA, their assessment of Carney, which is Pfizer's vaccine, noted biodistribution beyond the injection site, contradicting claims that the vaccine stays in the arm. In a recent groundbreaking study using single-cell precision nanocarrier identification revealed LNP accumulation in the heart tissue of mice with adverse proteomic changes in immune and vascular proteins, raising concerns about the cardiac complications that dovetail with what we were seeing when we were looking at the COVID-19 vaccine myocarditis. I will tell my first encounter with the vaccine injury came in winter of 2021. A 69-year-old man from Alabama presented with unexplained shortness of breath. He was a patient of mine. He really had no other reason that he had this shortness of breath. And after the second Pfizer dose, he actually had significant shortness of breath. I couldn't figure it out in the sense because he would typically be that he had a pulmonary embolism, but empirical anticoagulation and antiplatelet therapy brought rapid improvement. This case prompted deeper investigation. The spike protein's ability to induce fibrin is resistant to breakdown, activate platelets irreversibly, and damage the inside of our vessels, the vessels that run to every part of our body, every organ, explain his symptoms and those of thousands more since. I have treated approximately 4,000 patients suffering from long COVID vaccine injury, or both. Many were young and previously healthy. Those with vaccine injury, trust in public institutions has been shattered. Many were coerced under the August 2021 federal mandates, despite legitimate hesitations due to prior infection or personal health risks. They knew their body better than the agencies. Now disabled, they are dismissed or ignored by the systems that mandated their compliance. Myocarditis is also a big thing. This spring of 2021, a clear safety signal emerged. Myocarditis in young males linked to mRNA vaccines. The Department of Defense confirmed cases of rare heart inflammation and peer-reviewed studies later today. They detected circulating spike protein in post-vaccine myocarditis cases. Autopsy findings confirmed the fatal vaccine-induced myocarditis. Yet federal authorities accelerated licensing and mandates sidelined the concern. The CDC's hesitation to issue a health alert on myocarditis, and the FDA's former CBER director promoting vaccines on social media crossed the line from oversight to advocacy. This was not regulation, it was enforcement. Informed consent is the foundation of the patient-physician relationship. Absent the regulators providing that information, that relationship is irreparably harmed, and the practice of medicine continues to suffer. In closing, I urge you to stop blindly following the science. Science does not lead anywhere. It is an observer, measurer, and restrictor. It must inform leadership, not replace it. When leaders hide behind the science to justify policy, they abdicate responsibility. We need leadership that humbly engages with data, listens to patients, and actually acts to encourage. Thank you.
Next witness is Dr. James Thorpe, the third board certified obstetrician gynecologist and maternal fetal medicine specialist with over 44 years of clinical experience. A Jewish veteran and widely published physician, he has testified internationally, served as a journal peer reviewer, board member of the Society for Maternal Fetal Medicine, and examiner for the American Board of Obstetrics Statistics and
My patients focus on the most vulnerable, pregnant women, it is difficult to conceive the more egregious breach of medical ethics by the government-controlled medical industrial complex than the promotion of COVID-19 vaccines in pregnant, thereby, through transplacental transfer, effectively vaccinating their unborn and newborn children. This campaign was not accidental. It was calculated. Pregnant women are targeted deliberately to confusion. First, women are the primary decision across the human lifestyle, a known marketing principle. The two pregnant women are the most vulnerable patients. If they could be convinced that vaccine was safe and effective, it would imply that it was safe and effective for everyone. From the outset of the pandemic, this vaccine campaign was never grounded in biological science, but rather in behavioral science, specifically the manipulation of public perception through influence, fear, and persuasion. The federal government outsourced much of this psychological operations to NGOs which disseminated emotionally charged and misleading messaging. These entities falsely assured pregnant women that the vaccines were proven safe and essential for maternal and fetal newborn health, despite the fact that early evidence indicated quite the opposite. Pregnancy itself was protective against COVID-19 maternal mortality. Dr. Jay Winston, an initiative director at Harvard School of Public Health, described the government's vaccine marketing approach in the 2020 CBS News interview. He explained that the strategy was to, quote, go for the low-hanging fruit, those easiest to pick and harvest, end quote. And the fruit, end quote, tragically, were pregnant women. Only this deception was institutionalized in the now infamous electoral study published on April 21st, in the digital version of the New England Journal of Medicine. 21 authors found in this period rate was 12.6%, but the raw data revealed an 82% in women vaccinated during the first trimester. This figure mirrors the effects of chemical abortion drugs such as RE486. Also, in the same journal edition, on the same day, an op-ed appeared by CDC Director Rochelle Walensky and journal editor-in-chief Eric Rubin. These publications were riddled with conflicts of interest and deliberate misrepresentation intended to coerce pregnant women into taking vaccines. Subsequent studies have also claimed that COVID-19 vaccines are safe and effective during pregnancy and have been reviewed by respected researchers. These publications are fundamentally compromised by serious conflicts of interest, ranging from biased funding sources and institutional mandates, and even threats to their medical licenses and board certification. Between 2020 and 2022, pharmaceutical companies paid $1.06 billion to reviewers at leading medical journals, the New England Journal of Medicine, JAMA, Lancet, and BMJ, thus correcting the peer review process. At least 6 existing studies
3 from CDC, FDA, and 2 from Pfizer revealed major breaches in safety signals for COVID-19 vaccines and pregnancy. These findings were ignored. Conversely, countless independent researchers with no conflict of interest published findings that contradicted the false narrative and the pharmaceutical industry narrative, only to be rewarded by persecution, censorship, and threats to their medical license and board certification. This is not hypothetical. It happened to me. On February 8, 2025, our team of researchers published a peer-reviewed study in Science, Public Health Policy, and the Law. We identified 37 adverse pregnancy outcomes significantly associated with COVID-19 vaccine, including miscarriage, stillbirth, birth defects, cervical insufficiency, premature rupture membrane, preterm birth, and death of the newborn. Lynn and colleagues in a major journal publication documented that the COVID-19 vaccine traverses the placenta, enters the fetal cell, and bioactively produces spike protein in the placenta and the lining of the uterus. Recently, animal studies revealed the mRNA COVID vaccine causes the destruction of 60% of the ovarian reserve in rats. This catastrophic public health failure is financed with taxpayer dollars and channeled through federal agencies through medical gatekeepers such as the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecology, ACOG, the American Board of Obstetrics and Gynecology, ABOG, and the Society for Medicine, SMFM. These organizations have abandoned their ethics and responsibilities to physicians and patients and must be held accountable. I urge the government to immediately halt all funding for these entities and to end every promotional campaign that coerces or recommends experimental mRNA therapy for pregnant women. This must stop now. Thank you.
Our next witness is Dr. Bill Wallstock. Dr. Wallstock is an orthopedic surgeon originally from Wisconsin. He experienced an adverse event after during the COVID-19 infection that he received on December 30th, 2020. He has subsequently been diagnosed with transverse myelitis and despecified autoimmune disorder and autonomic dysfunction. He is medically retired and is now co-chairman of the Act 19.
Thank you, Senator Johnson, Senator McCall, and the subcommittee for inviting me to testify on the development and safety of the COVID-19 vaccine. I'm Joel Wallstock, a board-certified orthopedic surgeon, now medically disabled after one dose of Moderna COVID-19 vaccine. Before the pandemic, I enjoyed a successful practice in Wisconsin, performing over 800 major surgeries annually, trusting my health authorities. My practice followed the CDC COVID-19 guidelines by paying surgery, even temporarily. I proudly elected to get vaccinated. Within a week, I developed right weakness, numbness, substantial balance loss, leading falls, diagnosed with transverse myelitis, spinal cord fusion, and N18G. I was stunned that my providers dismissed any vaccine, despite using similar cases, halting the AstraZeneca trial. 4 years later, while I can walk, I have been diagnosed with dysautonomia and an undefined autoimmune disorder. Both debilitating conditions affect the ultimate body. I remain medically retired. The career I love and worked so hard for is now gone. In 2021, federal health agencies assured Americans that the COVID-19 vaccine trials were rigorous and closely monitored. Rigorous post-marketing surveillance. They also claimed to be robust safety net that would handle what they said were rare and mostly mild injuries, monitoring, follow-up, and financial aid. After my own vaccine, I learned the hard way that nothing would be farther from the truth. In my own battle to restore my health, I could not find a single reliable source of information from the CDC, from the FDA, or the NIH. Further, answers did not come from medical teams, the media, or even medical journals. Rather, the answers were being pieced together by tens of thousands of vaccine-injured patients huddled together in social media-based support groups who are constantly fighting for their right to simply exist. You will hear today a great deal about myocarditis, maternal fetal complications, and blood clotting disorders after the COVID-19 shot. I hope to talk more about the neurological adverse events of the COVID vaccine. These are the most common adverse events. I am now co-chair of React-19, which is a national, science-based, non-political, non-profit that represents over 36,000 Americans seriously injured by the COVID-19 virus. Our mission is to provide financial, physical, and emotional support. This gives me a unique perspective to share the collective experience of those who have been harmed, not just by the COVID-19 vaccines themselves, but also by the U.S. government. React-19 surveyed our 36,000 members, asking if the FDA takes vaccine injury seriously. 100% said false. Not even one person voted favorably. The vaccine injured share a uniform story. We did our duty for our country, became injured, disabled, or died. We further reported to Bear and DC, repeatedly contacted our elected officials and applied to the Countermeasures Injury Compensation Program, or CIC, only to face silence from the Bears, no response from DC, ghosting by our own representatives, and a 98% rejection rate from the CIC. For many tries for help were failed. Some were studied at the NIH in a program under Dr. Fauci, where they were diagnosed with vaccine complications but never disclosed to the public, despite promises that the NIH would do so. Privately, agencies said neurological conditions needed early recognition and treatment, while publicly they remained silent and often denying that they were even treating vaccine injuries. Rather, they promoted boosters and high-safety claims, while the White House directed social media to censor, quote, true stories of vaccine injuries, relegating NIH confirmed injuries into silence. That silence by health authorities, elected representatives, and even our White House has resulted in even more severe health outcomes and worse for many deaths. The PrEP Act shields drug companies from injury liability. It strips Americans of their constitutional right to due process and jury trial. This liability shield places the responsibility squarely on the U.S. government to address this crisis. Our constitutional rights must be replaced with effective safety monitoring and compensation. Today, these programs are dismal failures. Congress must urgently reform these failing systems or remove itself as a middleman and repeal the PrEP Act. An analysis of clinical trial data shows that for every 800 people vaccinated, one suffers a serious adverse event. We are here today to end the silence for one year. It is time to stop politicizing vaccine injuries and start building meaningful recognition, research, competent care, and fair and just compensation. At React-19, we say we've had negative reactions, but we're about seeking positive action. I will not stop until these humanitarian goals are met. Thank you.
Next witness is Dr. Mr. Aaron Siri. Dr. Siri is the managing partner of Siri and Lindstad, with over 85 professionals. He has handled numerous high-profile cases involving challenges to medical mandates, supporting vaccines, agency transparency, including forcing FDA's release of COVID-19 vaccine licensing documents, and opposing immunologists and these doctors and vaccinations.
Good afternoon. Thank you. Our vaccine practice doesn't When we litigate vaccine cases, we cannot rely on the next. We have to prove our claims with high impact data. For example, I saw a slide put up that showed 3 million lives were saved from COVID-19 vaccine. The citation to it was from Commonwealth study. If you follow that, that's not a peer-reviewed study. That's a blog. It's a blog that used a mathematical model to calculate the 3 million lives. I agree with Senator all that those claims made can't be evidence. And that's what we can't carefully the underlying we are making I don't think that if I went into court and I was drawing a blog using mathematical model, I would laugh it out. But unfortunately, when it comes to promoting vaccines, that's what we often see. The underlying data is not typically really carefully evaluated. Claims about what vaccines do are positive because they're helping to respond to promotion. These claims that vaccines cause harm to often get I also heard that deaths sharply look at all-cause mortality in the United States, deaths are up. Most of the most frail, weak among us died of COVID. We should have had a reduction in all-cause mortality. We did not. Those numbers are can argue with fine, dead, alive. You can argue whether the vaccine kills you or didn't. COVID kills you or didn't. But if you can't argue with all-cause mortality, we did not have a reduction. With that said, not only do we need to carefully study the data and science, again, I don't have an MBA or PhD or MBA, we also need to understand the economic and regulatory framework around vaccines. And COVID-19 vaccines did not just fall into a vacuum. They fell into a very well-developed regulatory and economic framework for vaccines that was developed in the last 40 years. For every product on the market, you can see the manufacturer for harm, for design. Claim that the product could have been safe. I mean, literally, look around the store, planes, cars, pharmaceutical drugs, every one. There's only one product in America you cannot see the manufacturer for design that claim that it could have been safe. And that are vaccines. I heard, injection vaccines. My definition of vaccine is any product for which the government needs to give it immunity. We need that sort of vaccine. Some events like this, that's what vaccine is. You can't survive without that. Why did vaccines get this immunity, which was provided in 1986 under the National Childhood Vaccine Reaction? Because leading up to 86, only 3 routine childhood vaccines were involved in BCG. And they were causing so much harm and causing such liability that all the manufacturers were going out of business about making it. Congress instead of forcing the manufacturers. So the product manufacturers what? Instead, you know what? We're going to make it so nobody can see what's wrong. You can keep selling the product to the American public no matter how many children kill and the issue is that immunity is not just given to those three products. I tell you this not to take issue with childhood vaccines, but to explain to you the regulatory framework that vaccines have developed over the last 40 years. We have now gone from 3 injections the first year of life in 86 to 29 injections, including today. Every one of those vaccines was developed by a pharmaceutical company, knowing they would not be responsible for the injuries that are caused. So when you have drug trials from people that they care about losing money, they don't want to lose money on their drugs. They often do multi-year clinical trials before they get on the market. They don't want to end up upside down. They're there to make money. Vaccine products, because they don't have that money, they have the actual business. Every childhood vaccine in this country is licensed based on clinical trials involving no placebo control, often days or weeks, up to maybe 6 months of taking your injection. And often extremely underpowered. Those trials can never really replace the product. My submission to this committee laid out every single vaccine. But wrap up by saying this. You might say, well, okay, pharmaceutical companies did that, but why would the FDA allow it? It's because unfortunately our federal health authority is hopelessly conflicted. Congress gave them conflicting structural duties. They were responsible for promoting vaccines and for preventing vaccine issues. And you also have to be responsible for safety. Those conflict. One is overtaking the other. And for the most part, based on our over 2,000 requests for federal health agencies over the years that have to respond, I can't tell you, our federal health agencies act like partners. They're not only encourage it, they act basically like a shoot us on because when the immunity to liability was given to the pharmaceutical Congress recognized that apparently transfer all the safety funds to HHS and manage the health vaccine. And by doing so, it's enabled that was a very, very quick way to try and convey the regulatory and economic framework to the COVID-19 vaccine fell into, and why, from the pharmaceutical and FDA's perspective, the COVID-19 vaccine, because they've been robust, they were compared to childhood vaccines, but compared to drugs or anybody that actually wants to assess safety, they absolutely are not robust. They were incredibly anemic. And as for post-sites, which are regulators didn't do their job, but really they acted like pharmaceutical companies seeking to cover up funds to avoid replication and damage to national liability. I hope this hearing can help begin the process of
Series. Final witnesses, governor and doctor. First calling senators like you call doctor. Governor and doctor, Dr. Green, tonight governor provides years of degrees in biology and biology, swap mortality.
The Right Honorable Mark Carney, Prime Minister of Canada, and Mrs. Diana Fox Carney. Le Très Honorable Mark Carney, Premier ministre du Canada, et Madame Diana Fox Carney. Her Excellency Ursula von der Leyen, President of the European Commission, and Professor Dr. Heiko von der Leyen. Son Excellence, Madame Ursula von der Leyen, Présidente de la Commission européenne, et Professeur Dr. Heiko von der Leyen. His Excellency Antonio Costa, President of the European Council. Son Excellence Monsieur Antonio Costa, Président du Conseil européen.
I will, exactly. You know what she might do? She really coming.
His Excellency Friedrich Merz, Chancellor of the Federal Republic of Germany, and Mrs. Charlotte Merz. Son Excellence Monsieur Friedrich Merz, chancelier de la République fédérale d'Allemagne, et Madame Charlotte Merz.
Thank you for enduring our football talk. My wife.
His Excellency Shigeru Ishida, Prime Minister of Japan, and Mrs. Yoshiko Ishida. Son Excellence Monsieur Shigeru Ishida, Premier ministre du Japon, et Madame Yoshiko Ishida.
Yeah, coming here. My wife is
The Right Honorable Sir Keir Starmer, Prime Minister of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. Le très honorable Sir Keir Starmer, Premier ministre du Royaume-Uni de Grande-Bretagne et d'Irlande du Nord.
You're going to get tired of being 35 minutes. It is a good spot. So, yes, much better. Yeah. So, going to be all right. He's on the
Her Excellency Giorgia Meloni, President of the Council of Ministers of the Italian Republic. Son Excellence Madame Giorgia Meloni, Présidente du Conseil des ministres de la République italienne.
this is the chart. This is the chart. I started, I was looking at I have been
Honorable Donald J. Trump, President of the United States of America, l'honorable Donald J. Trump, Président des États-Unis d'Amérique.
Beautiful. I know. It's beautiful. It's good.
So the line is they had a study Japanese regulators uncovered that
I was Diana.
So that was the first thing we were talking about.
You go over there. I'll put you in there. Okay, good. Yeah. Not bad. Not bad. That's it. Put the girl in there.
That virus, the body mass, this actually hijacks the cell. Has the cell produce.
We got the cake and the other day.
Body.
It's got 100% cancer rate. I thought it was but that's only 50 years ago.
I'm watching there, so it's on the body.
You did? I said it. All right, so after you come this way, yeah, and then we'll step on forward.
Are you considering sending doctor to India?
Until 2021.
His Excellency Emmanuel Macron, President of the French Republic. Son Excellence Monsieur Emmanuel Macron, Président de la République française.
Monsieur le Président. J'ai une truc très frappe.
COVID injection, and we know VAERS dramatically understates by a factor of 10, 100. We know it understates it. 9,228 of those deaths are occurring on the day of vaccination, the 1 or 2 days. Okay, I know VAERS doesn't prove causation, but man, that's a correlation we should have been looking at, but they ignored and they censored. But enough of that. Dr. McCullough, please, in my layman's terms, I just kind of laid out the harmful mechanisms of this injection. Can you and Dr. Vaughn, because I think you've both spoken to this, again, in layman's terms, talk about why this caused so much harm in so many different ways because of the biodistribution. Dr. McCullough.
80% of Americans took a vaccine. 20% didn't. 20% did not take a vaccine. The vaccine was never safe enough for me to take. Messenger RNA, devised by Pfizer and Moderna, has been chemically modified to be unassailable to enzymes in the body to be broken down. The messenger RNA is found in the human heart of people who die after the vaccine. It's found in the brain. The spike protein is found everywhere in the body. 3 studies now show the spike protein is circulating in the blood for 6 to 9 months after people take the shot. This part of the virus, the lethal part of the virus, in the vaccinated, it's circulating in the blood. And then they take a booster, they get more circulating in the blood. It is a killer protein. It cannot be safe. It was not safe by design. Safety trumps efficacy. We cannot tolerate false drug claims. And we saw a poster behind Senator Blumenthal making a false drug claim that vaccines saved millions of lives, specifically the COVID vaccine. Well, let's take a look at that. When someone signs consent for a vaccine, Senator Blumenthal, does the consent form say it's going to save their lives? Of course it doesn't. It's not on the FAQ. There's never been a prospective, randomized, double-blind, placebo-controlled trial ever showing that COVID-19 vaccines reduce mortality or hospitalization. There's not even a valid non-randomized study. Thankfully, COVID mortality went down for 3 reasons. Because we all got the infection, vaccinated and unvaccinated, so we developed population natural immunity. We developed early treatment. Credit to Operation Warp Speed. We used all the Operation Warp Speed tools, additional drugs. We treated patients with multi-drug protocols at home so they don't go to the ER. So Governor Green never saw the patients we treated because they were successfully treated at home. And the third reason is that the virus mutated to a much milder form. Those things happen concurrently with rollout of the vaccine. The vaccine cannot be falsely credited with saving millions of lives. We can't allow false drug advertising to be put up on a poster behind one of our public servants. We cannot accept that.
So let me quick. And I will have a lot more. I will have a lot more questions. Put up that optional chart number 4 here, because I think this is something I developed September 2021, and this shows the number of daily cases and you see it's peaking in January, right as we're rolling out the vaccine, but we really haven't injected it with anybody. If by the time we had any kind of significant uptake of the vaccines, we were way down in terms of the number of cases. This virus was burning itself out. Okay, now we had different variants. Again, I've read a lot of information about vaccination into the midst of a pandemic driving variants. Is that what happened? I don't know. But you would think if a vaccine were that effective, the tail would just continue and the pandemic would be over. But that's not what happened. We had a whole new surge, and this is Delta, and doctors are talking very deadly.
Okay.
More deadly.
Good morning, everyone. Bonjour tout le monde. Welcome to Kananaskis and the 2025 G7 Leaders Summit. I'm pleased all leaders are here, honored by your presence. In my home province, Alberta, in the heart of the Canadian Rockies. I'd note that we are also meeting on Treaty 7 territory. These are the traditional lands of the Blackfoot Confederacy, the Stoney Nakoda Nations, and the Tsuut'ina First Nations. And we're gathering at one of those turning points in history. I think we all recognize that turning point where the world looks to this table for leadership. 50 years ago, in France, a group of leading industrial nations got together in the face of global economic and financial crisis. The end of the international monetary system is known. Stagflation threatening, challenges in the Middle East, geopolitical challenges in the Middle East, and it was the frank, informal discussions around that table in Rambouillet that led to a long period of decisions and prosperity at that time. Alors, nous avons de la chance d'avoir le doyen du G7 avec Monsieur le Président maintenant. And then following the fall of the Berlin Wall, the G7 gathered to integrate those countries that had been behind the Iron Curtain of communism and to accelerate the flow of capital and trade to the developing world. 23 years ago, the G7 met here in Kananaskis. We were just talking about it. And that was when the world was still reeling from the aftershocks of 9/11, another turning point in history. And amongst the many decisions taken were control of the spread of weapons of mass destruction, a subject that we'll be coming back to. So as I said, we're meeting at one of those hinge moments, those turning points in history. The world's more divided and dangerous. Hostile states and terrorists have expanded their capabilities and their reach, threatening global security in our local communities. Global commerce, energy systems, even intelligence are all being rewired. En tant que membre du